Hi everyone, I'm David Fisher, and this is Presidential Chronicles, the series of books and videos on American history as seen through the lives of the presidents of the United States. This episode is from the life of John Quincy Adams, and the focus is chip off the old block. Well, John Quincy Adams was a chip off the old block, his father John Adams, but it was not easy to fill those shoes. In fact, this goes back to John Quincy's grandfather, Deacon John Adams, who had settled in the outskirts of Boston, Massachusetts in the early 18th century, and he brought to his family a very strong work ethic based on his Puritan background. But it wasn't just about hard work. It was selfless community service, where the community always came first. Yes, individuals could be ambitious, the drive to get ahead, even become wealthy. But when they had decisions to make, what was in their best interest, perhaps in trying to get ahead, or in the best interest of the community as a whole, the community always had to win. And that wasn't an easy task, to be so selfless in one's personal and professional careers. In fact, most of the offspring from Deacon John Adams throughout the various families and generations failed to live up to this. It was really too hard. Several, in fact, about one per generation really thrived, and two became president of the United States. The careers of John Adams and his son, John Quincy Adams, actually had a lot of similarities. One of the differences, though, is John Quincy started at a much younger age and went in his career to a much older age. So let's start at the beginning for him. It's July 11, 1767. John Quincy Adams is born in Braintree, Massachusetts. His parents are John and Abigail Adams. John Adams, his father, is a lawyer, a prominent one in the Boston area. He is also a farmer, and he is about to become a politician and a rebel and a drive for the American independence. All of that was about to happen. But it was really John Quincy's mother, Abigail, who raised the family. She was the one who was home while John Adams was often away, either again in his legal responsibilities or ultimately at the Continental Congress, where he went in the middle of the 1770s. So Abigail had a great influence on the children as well, and she also brought that strong, virtuous work ethic to the family, where the parents were very united. It was going to be very difficult for John Quincy not to take this on, even though his siblings would really struggle with it. We know this from the very beginning. John Quincy Adams, at 8 years old, wrote his father a letter. It was, again, at the Continental Congress at the time. And he said, "I wish, sir, you would give me in writing some instructions with regard to the use of my time, and advise me how to proportion my studies and play, and I will keep them by me and endeavor to follow them. With the present determination of growing better, I am, dear sir, your son, John Quincy Adams." This was a boy who had really taken on that Adams credo at the age of 8 years old when he wrote this letter. Well, John Adams finally left Congress in 1777. He came home to the family, but he wasn't there for very long because Congress decided they needed his service, and of course, the Adams work ethic you always gave to the community, and this time it was actually to go abroad, to go to France, and to help convince the French to support the American cause for independence, support the other ministers already there, like Benjamin Franklin, to get the French to come on the American side. And he decided to not only take the mission, but to bring his 10-year-old son with him, John Quincy Adams. And he thought maybe he would be educational for him. He could oversee the other academic portion of his education, and so he brought his son with him. It was not an easy journey. 6 weeks aboard this ship where they were seasick almost the entire time. And at one point they were actually almost boarded by a British warship that was nearby, but they escaped through, eventually arrived in France after 6 weeks. They got there with the good news that their mission had already been accomplished. The French had just decided to recognize the United States and provide some assistance. The bad news was that meant John Adams didn't really have a mission anymore, and he didn't really know what to do. So John Quincy was enrolled in a boarding school. Best part about that was that he learned French very quickly. In fact, he realized that he took to languages quickly, and this would help him really throughout his life as he spent a lot of time in various ministerial duties in various European countries. But for now, he learned French. His father was figuring out what to do, and his mother also had an influence. It wasn't just John Adams who was driving that work ethic into him. His mother wrote a really interesting letter to her son, academic education will be of little value and small estimation unless virtue, honor, truth, and integrity are added to them. For as dear as you are to me, I had much rather you should have found your grave in the ocean you have crossed, or any untimely death crop you in your infant years, rather than see you an immoral profligate or a graceless child. Talk about pressure from parents. This was from his mother, Abigail, in a letter. And again, he is 11 years old at the time. And that 11-year-old boy brought the same feeling in a letter he wrote to his younger brother, Charles, about the same time. He said to his 8-year-old brother, "Your business and mine are upon the same foundation to qualify ourselves to be useful members of society and to get a living in the world." An 11-year-old to an 8-year-old, he was definitely following in the Adams footsteps. Well, they stayed about a year. John Adams didn't really have much to do. They came back to the United States. Abigail is grateful to have her husband and her son back home, but it didn't last very long. In fact, about 4 months, and they were back on a ship to France. What was this mission? Well, this time, the Revolutionary War was not going well for the Americans, but Congress felt they needed to have their minister on the ground in Europe in case things turned for the positive and they could begin negotiating an end to the Revolutionary War. They wanted John Adams to take on that responsibility. Once again, Abigail wasn't happy. She didn't want him to go, but he was never going to turn down this opportunity to serve his nation. He brings John Quincy with him. He even brings his next son, Charles, along as well. This time the travel was probably even worse because a couple of days into the journey, their ship sprung a leak. And they had to contribute along with the rest of the cast and the crew and the members who were traveling in the party to pump and pump and pump and pump day and night to keep that ship afloat as it continued off to Europe. Eventually, it picked the first spot of land it could find, which was in western Spain, and John Adams had to make a decision. Do I wait a month for repair, or do we actually travel by foot or by horse or by carriage any way we can over land the 900 miles to Paris? And he chose the land route, which was absolutely miserable, but the one who never complained, John Quincy. He was not a complainer. He sucked it up and went along for the ride. Well, this time in Europe, family bounced around a little bit. John Adams was in France for a while. He also spent time in the Netherlands where he was trying to get recognition for the Americans and also to get loans because that's where some of the money was to help the economy of his fledgling nation. And it also gave an opportunity just a couple of years into this to get John Quincy Adams into the public service. He's 14 years old at the time, and there was a change in assignments in Europe for the Americans. Francis Dana, who was part of the mission to France, was given a new job. Minister to Russia. Let's see if we can get another big European country on our side, was the view of the Congress. The problem was Dana didn't speak Russian, and he didn't speak French, which was the diplomatic language of Europe. But who did? John Quincy Adams. And this young man, 14 years old, was given the assignment of being Francis Dana's secretary and interpreter. So he is off to Russia, a couple thousand miles away. Unfortunately, that venture didn't go very well. The Tsarina Catherine, who was ruling Russia at the time, she was very much aligned with the monarchs of Europe, hardly these upstart Americans. So she actually refused to receive Dana. It ended up being somewhat of an aborted trip, but it was the first public service for John Quincy Adams at the age of 14. And it continued as soon as he got back to France. By this point, the Americans had beaten the British on the field of battle. They won the Battle of Yorktown in 1781. The fighting in America had effectively ended, and the peace treaty negotiations was the center point with John Adams and John Jay and Benjamin Franklin on the American side, and John Quincy Adams had a role. He was now his father's secretary, which was an important administrative responsibility for the teenager to help in generating the Treaty of Paris, which finally ended the Revolutionary War and led to American independence being secured. It also led to a really happy period for the Adams family. John Adams felt that it was safe for his wife and daughter to travel, and they joined John Quincy, the Adams family, in Paris, and they had a wonderful time, not only the four of them, but with the unofficial fifth member of their family by the name of Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson was the new minister to France. And he and Adams hit it off. They did everything together, but it wasn't just Jefferson with John Adams, it was the whole family. And John Quincy loved spending time with Jefferson. If Jefferson wasn't having dinner at their place, John Quincy was at Jefferson's house. They went to bookstores together, the theater, dinner conversation. It was really an enjoyable period for the entire family. But at this point, John Quincy Adams, turning 18 years old, he's now a man and he's got to look to his future. For that future, that was back in the United States. So he got on a ship, came home, off to college, and for the Adams men, that meant Harvard. He got in, he served there for 4 years, or he studied there for 4 years, did extremely well, finished second in his class, not a surprise as he was always committed to his academics, and it began a lifelong relationship between John Quincy Adams and Harvard. The next period in John Quincy's life was kind of depressing. He wasn't really sure what to do next. He longed to continue his public service, but he realized he needed a career. He finally decided to study the law, but he wasn't happy about it. He said at one point in 1788, "I am good for nothing. 3 long years I have yet to study in order to qualify for business, and then how many years am I to plod along mechanically if I should live before I shall really get into the world?" He didn't want to be a lawyer. He wanted to be a public servant like his father. He wanted to be someone who made a difference in his community. This was another point of inflection for John Quincy Adams. He passed the bar, he started practicing the law, but it wasn't his area of interest. It's 1790, he's 23 years old, he's already had a lifetime of experiences, but he was really just beginning. And those are stories for another day. That is John Quincy Adams and Chip Off the Old Block from the life of John Quincy Adams. For more presidential chronicles, check out my books on Amazon.com and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Until next time, I'm David Fisher, and this is Presidential Chronicles.